Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome at this session, Turning Paintings into Movies at Lineas. Sort of a surprising title for a Tableau session, I think, but we'll prove the relevance of the comparison later on. In the next minutes, we will talk about our Tableau story, our Tableau journey, about how we are creating our Tableau story and about how we are turning our self-service process from a slow and cumbersome process into a dynamic team effort. And we just attended the session about the art of balance between governance and self-service in the previous session. And you can see this as a sort of a practical example of how we doing this, of how you put this into practice. So we are Stijn van Keer and Tom de Dekker. We both work as a data analyst at Lineas. And we're very glad that Tableau gave us the opportunity here today to talk about our Tableau journey. But before we deep dive into a script, I will talk you a little bit more about Lineas itself. So Lineas is a rail freight operator. We're headquartered in Belgium, in Brussels, but our main hub is situated in Antwerp. So what do? We transport goods all over Europe. That can be anything, from cars to chemicals, to consumer goods. We even have our own beer train. So we transport goods all over Europe. And in order to do that, we employ about 2,000 employees. We own more than 200 locomotives. We have more than 7,000 wagons. And in 2018, we achieved an annual turnover of about 500 million euro. So in general, it's important to say that the rail freight sector is emitting 9 times less carbon dioxide than the freight by trucks. So doing this transport by rail is much more, produces much less emissions than doing it by trucks. So it's the amount of 2 million tons carbon dioxide. That's more than 60,000 trucks a year. That's a huge amount. So making this comparison is not a coincidence, because at Lineas, we really want to contribute to a much cleaner environment, because everybody knows we're all living in Europe, most of us, and especially in Belgium, our roads, they are full, they are packed. We're standing still too much of our time. So at Lineas, we really want to do something about it. And what are we doing? We're trying to create or provide easy door-to-door solutions for our customers. And that can be providing the first mile. So we're picking up the cargo from various customer sites, terminals or other hubs, and bringing them to our transport hub or transport hubs in Belgium or in other places in Europe, and then do some shunting operations, do safety checks and stuff like that. Next to the first mile, we do also the long haul. So we have created an international network of different connections, different important European hubs all over Europe, where we can bring the goods from the one point to another. So that's what we call the long haul. And then last but not least, we're also doing the last mile when the cargo is shipped from the hub, from the destination hub to the client side. So next to these services, we have naturally also different types of transport. For our customers who need high volumes of commodities, we have our block trains, so it's one train per customer. But for sure, we know that a lot of our customers don't need those high volumes. They just need one wagon or a few wagons, and therefore we have other solutions like single wagon load. Next to that, we have also container wagons. So those are wagons they are able to put containers on. And next to these door-to-door solutions, we also offer other kind of services like wagon maintenance or wagon rental or lock rental and stuff like that. So I already told you about the thing that Lineas is really trying to create. So is providing an end-to-end logistic solution, and that's also really our purpose. because rail freight transport represents almost 10% of all the CO2 emissions in Europe. And this is mainly caused, like I already said, by the heavy reliance on trucks. And we know it's still growing. We know that by 2030, the transport sector is expected to grow by 30%. So if we don't do anything, this will be disastrous for our climate, for our environment. And at Lineas, we really want to do something about it. We would like to have that our clients, our customers, will shift their transport, that they will shift from road to rail. That's what we call the modal shift. That's our purpose. We try to convince them with our solutions that they will shift their transport from road to rail. And to make our business a bit more tangible for you, we will show you a few shots from our Lineas movie we've made a time ago in the context of our rebranding. So we'll make our business a bit more visible, a bit more tangible for you.
Really good.
Lineas. There's a new dynamic in freight transport. A powerful frontrunner that's pushing logistics forward. A refreshing player that pursues the ambitious goal to offer such superior rail products to industrial companies that they shift the transport of their goods from road to rail. Yes, Lineas wants to accelerate the modal shift. We believe we can make a real difference when it comes to improving mobility and contributing to a cleaner environment. That's our purpose.
So accelerating that modal shift is really our purpose. But in order to do that, we need, among many other things, data. But having data is not enough. We have to turn that data into information, into insights, even into predictions. And that is where Tableau comes in.
Right. Thanks, Dan. So, as you can see, we have a whole lot of movement going around across Europe as a company. So we have data coming from everywhere, feeding us with information about our transports, about our customers. So, for example, we have, of course, our internal processes, like the CRM, our sales process, that's all generating lots of valuable data. We also have various operational events going on across Europe. For example, the wagons that get damaged or incidents that happen on rail, which happen all the time. Or we have, of course, a bunch of tracking and tracing data. Arrivals, departures. We need to notify our customers that their cargo is at its destination. So all those kinds of events are coming into our systems, not just from us, also from the myriad of partners that we are working with across Europe to realize these transports. And then there's also like really old school, just files being handed to us, being mailed to us. Some of the partners we're working with, their IT department is, I would say, not as evolved as ours is, just because they are small players. So they use Excel to do their reporting, and a lot of the information we are trying to get from them, we just get it in the form of a CSV file somewhere. So all of this information together is building the story of how our transport is happening across Europe. And we want to know, what are we doing? What's happening? And more importantly, how are we doing? Are we doing well? Are we not? Our shareholders definitely like to know. So we needed to get to work on that data. But working with that data poses a series of challenges, because a lot of the data we are getting is hard to access, for example, because the source systems have an unstructured or a very suboptimal kind of database. And even just accessing it can be a chore. And definitely not something you want your sales representative doing, of course. These various systems, so you should know Lineas was founded a good 10 years ago, but we were founded on the ashes of another railway company. So even though we are trying to act as a young and dynamic company, we have a large legacy, especially when it comes to IT systems, that's dragging us down. So integrating all of these systems is a challenge on its own. And the result is that many of the sources of data that we have available to us have serious data quality issues. And letting an untrained, I would say, worker loose on that will just give useless insights. Then, of course, there's the issue of working with different granularities. When you mix the wrong data with each other, you'll get an explosion of the number of records. And when people are counting things or summing things, they risk getting a result that's just plain wrong. Can't have that. And then there's, of course, just little technical stuff. People need to know how you should handle data. What is the correct level to aggregate data? All these kinds of things make it that just having the data is not enough. You need to help people to work with it. You need to process it for them. Because if you don't, the picture we're getting will get blurry. We first had a nice little story. We had a nice little story going on here. But as people are working with it, maybe filtering out some of the stuff they don't like, the things get grainy quickly. But most of all, if you don't help these people, the worst thing can happen. And then that's when they start getting creative. And I think you all know what getting creative means when we're talking data. This is what it means. It means people start working in Excel. Now, let me assure you, this is something I just made up for this presentation. Reports by our salespeople are not that good looking generally. But as you can imagine, we needed to get rid of this. We needed to move along. We needed to go with the times. We needed to get our story straight. And the comparison we're trying to make here, and this is where the title of the presentation comes from, is these people who are starting getting creative, they are like painters. And why is that? So, of course, here it is. Our salesperson trying to wrangle data to get a report. And then they have a report. That's their painting. That's the story they're trying to tell, that's the image they're trying to produce, is the information they're trying to get. And what are they using for that? Generally, they're not using live data. They're using data extracts. Somebody, somewhere, gave them an Excel file, and they started working on it. Whether that Excel file has been constructed correctly, what time it was taken, oftentimes they don't care. They're just happy to get data. And you can't fault these people. I mean, they needed to have something. We didn't have the tools in place to offer it to them, so they started working with what they have. And what they have can be anything. Most commonly it is Excel, but some people are building beautiful things. Well, we think they're hideous, but they think they're beautiful in Microsoft Access as well, or various other tools. All of which, of course, ungoverned, unmonitored, and a real chore to maintain, because there's no documentation and no information. Everybody's creating their own story, their own little painting. And what you get after a while is this. You get, instead of a company full of business experts helping our customers, making sure trains run right, what you get is an army of painters. Each single one of them, they're looking at the same reality because they're looking at a subset, but still the same data, the same reality we are working in, but they're all getting creative. They're all doing their own thing. If you start looking at this picture, there's some people who seem to be doing vastly different things than others are. What are they? They're all looking at the same example, of course. But as you can see, like this one's using different colors than this one is, and so on. And then, of course, comes the challenge of putting all this together. And what you'd hope is you'd get something, well, not exactly like this painting from Bosch, I think, but Bruegel, Peter Paul, Bruegel. That's the one. So what you hope is something like this. You get a multitude of stories taking place in this reality of ours, and everybody's focusing on getting their little piece of the picture right. And if all goes well, the big picture is one nice, seamlessly flowing story telling how we are doing, what we are doing. People, in this picture, this is of course taken from a singular point of view. And to get data really to work with each other, it's important that the scale is the same. People are working in the same granularity. People are talking the same language. The big picture makes sense. That's what we're aiming at. But that's not the reality we are dealing with here. Because if you have all these very creative people making all these beautiful things, what you get is something more like this. A patchwork of paintings, a patchwork of stories. Everybody did their own thing from their own point of view. So oftentimes the pictures they are creating, they are painting, they date from different timelines because the extracts they were using came from different times. Does this make sense? I don't know what the story is being told here. I didn't create this myself. I just found this is an actual painter's work, of course, but I have no idea what the story is trying to tell. And if your dashboard resembles this and you're presenting this to management, of course they won't understand you. But all of this goes back to people started getting creative because they didn't have the tools to do it right. So there's really so many reasons why this is wrong, of course. It's cumbersome. One of the main issues here is that it's consuming so much time. And these people, they are not trained data analysts. They are sales representative, or they are engineers working on expanding our network. They are asset managers who should be looking at how we get our wagons and our locomotives fixed fast and reliably. Instead, they're just wasting their time wrangling data, doing stuff they were never trained to do. Why? Because they didn't have the tools. The thing is, they'll always be chasing time, of course, because whenever you need to wrangle data, you are wasting time, and by the time you're done, your picture may already be out of date. So that's an issue. It's impossible to maintain because everybody's working in isolation on their own laptop. Everything's local, few things are documented. That's natural. All in all, that's not a situation we want. We don't want to have our people investing their time into making pictures. We don't. The way we see things, we need to move on. We need to start shooting movies, not just like the tidbit we showed you earlier. We need to really focus our attention at just getting the story right, telling the story. And that does mean no longer putting the focus on just getting the picture right, no longer reproducing it. No. The data should be there, and people should be focused on how they can zoom in, zoom out, what angle to take, but they should all be looking at the same picture, which should be not a static one. It should be dynamic, it should evolve, it should get refreshed, because data is not a static thing. It's very much alive. And only by doing that, they'll be able to focus on what matters even more. They'll be able to be the director they are supposed to be. They are able to guide the actors. They are able to help our customers, make sure people on the ground doing shunting operations are doing them in the best way possible, in the safest way possible as well. That's where we want their focus to be. So let me take the picture we had earlier about the painter, and let's flip that around. Let's imagine we are a movie studio. So of course we have a story to tell. That's the actors, the things that are actually happening. We need a movie studio. We need somewhere where all the data will live. We need a director, the person in charge, the person who's trying to tell the story. And then we'll need technical people to make sure everything goes smoothly. We need a camera recording the data. And of course, we need some software, God knows which one, to produce it, to make sure it's attractive and it's clear and it's right and people can comment on it. I wish there was software like that. So the focus here are our set, our actors, that's our story. The studio, that'll be our data storage. That's where everything lives. That's where the work is getting done. We'll need a place to store all that data, a place where all those stories are happening, or at least the data from those stories is happening. When I mentioned the director, the one telling the stories, of course, when we're talking Tableau, that'll be the creator. That'll be the person in charge of making the report. We have a wonderful crew of people, such as Stan and me, who are, of course, guiding everyone and helping them to make sure everything is set in place on a technical level. We are also involved in governing the process, co-producers, as you could say. And then, of course, we have our tools, both the camera and and the production software. And in our case, that's, of course, Tableau. That's why we're here, naturally. I'm sure that wasn't a surprise to anyone. Of course, that's only half of the story. You don't want only to shoot films. You want people to enjoy them. You want you want your stories out in the world. You need a movie theater to show them in. And you need an audience to look at it. Otherwise, you're working for, well, no one. So we have an audience. We have a movie theater. We have consumers and a BI platform. And we have our data stories. And all of that is happening in Tableau as well for us. So let's just give a quick shout out to the people we're working with who are trying to turn the paintings into movies. So first of all, we have Bart. That's our team lead. He's sitting right there if you want to wave to him. And we have our wonderful tech crew. Just 3 of them right now. These are data engineers. They are doing the heavy lifting of programming, of setting up our environments. We have a data warehouse. They're custom coding large parts of that. Then we have the co-producers. This group of people, we have a hybrid role. So on the one hand, we are involved in analyzing data, doing data profiling to make sure the jobs being created by the tech crew are done right. On the other hand, we are also guiding the directors, the creators, the people building dashboards, in best practices on doing that. We are also governing our platform, making sure people have they have their role and responsibilities right, also helping people to get training to become even better at what they're doing. And then these are the real stars. I mean, of course, the data is what we're showing, but behind it, these are our star directors. We have a bunch more because we really want to democratize data at Lineas. We want all these people who are working in Excel to see that there is a better way. So we are trying to make our data as broadly available as possible. But of course, you'll always have a select group of people who will be quick on their feet, who will be very motivated to work with it. These are just a few of our star directors. And this could be you, because we're actually looking for more data engineers. And I thought I'd throw this out here just in case, if you're looking for an opportunity in Belgium. Might as well try, right? So let's get to a more, technical slide on how the environment that Lineas is actually set up. I'm sure you've seen a variation of this a bunch of times. We're quickly going to go through it to give you an idea of how we are working. So we have these various source systems I was mentioning earlier: CRM, sales, track and trace, our main operating system. We have an operational system. We have a planning system, and so on and so on. That's the start of everything. So we have all this data, and we need to store it somewhere. Our movie studio. In our case, we have two different environments. Well, they're stored in the same physical place, but there's two approaches, and they're exposed differently. On the one hand, we have a data warehouse, which we are building ourselves. So data in the data warehouse goes through a lot of transformations and checks to make sure it is absolutely correct, and people can work with it with full confidence. So that's one. But because programming all this creates another bottleneck, namely 3 data engineers who need to do all of that, we didn't want to have all of our users waiting for us. That's why we created a second platform. That's what we call the analytics platform. And that's where just raw data gets exposed. So even if data is not available in the data warehouse yet, if it's not as good looking as it could be or validated, people still need to be able to get on with it and start working. So we're also offering the raw data for now as a temporary solution. And then, of course, we need a way where people can access it and work with it. So that's our BI platform. These are Tableau data sources. We have, of course, a fantastic group of users. We have 4 different kinds, and Stan, in a minute, will tell you a lot more about those. And these people are the ones creating the stories, creating the dashboards, various metrics, and so on, and so on. And that's not all we're doing, because once we have a hold of all the data, aside from just purely functional cases for our users, we're also using all this data we have in a well-structured way available to us right now. We are using it to create a feedback loop, to check whether there are serious data quality issues to be tackled. So we created another separate project where we're actively trying to get everyone involved to start fixing things when they arrive. Because we find a lot of things while data profiling. It would be a shame if all that knowledge goes to waste. So we log it in a separate project. We keep track of it. And when the opportunities arise, we go and talk with our users, go and talk with the application experts who are responsible for development, or at least keeping up with development for the different applications. And we try to get things fixed, be it adding a mandatory, making sure certain values are mandatory, putting masks over values to make sure everybody's doing it the same way, and so on. And we're using Tableau to do that. In the same BI platform, we have a different project just with different quality checks. And we have Last Dashboard just for us to make sure so we can see how's our data quality improving over time. For those of you who are interested in this, I've also added a few of the tools we're using. So the development of the data warehouse is done in Spark, so custom code. The extraction of our various source systems that we're doing through NiFi. And then our data is stored on AWS. And depending on where it comes from, we're offering it in different forms, either or through Athena when it comes to raw data, because we like how Athena has a crawler which identifies the data for you, which is quite useful, because otherwise it'd be a lot of manual labor. And to repeat, the analytics platform is specifically built to offer data fast, so we can't have any bottlenecks there. And then when it comes to the data warehouse, we're using RDS. So the data is It's more performant, that's the main thing, but also because the data is better structured, AWS deals is better dealing with that. So let me give this to Stan.
Thanks, Tom. I'll explain a bit more about how we're using Tableau Server as our governed BI platform. But to start with, it's important to say that we at Lineas strongly believe in self-service BI. We really think that enabling our all data-minded people in our business is so much stronger than depending on a central IT team that does everything, that creates the data sources and creates the visualizations. So, but that belief really originated from our team, from our data team, but we're convincing more and more people as we go. So that's really important to say that we strongly believe in self-service, but it has to be governed, it has to be structured, and Tableau Server gives us the opportunity to do that. It's important to say as well that we really want to create a we story together with business. It's not just an IT story or not just a business story. That is why we have established a Tableau governance task force from the beginning. From the moment we started, we created a task force together with our Tableau ambassadors. We call them like that. Those are our key users. And together with them, we are creating our Tableau journey, our Tableau story. We asked for their feedback about the review process we had in mind, which I will explain a little bit later, or the different types of users we had. So they provide us with feedback about how we were, as a data team, were thinking about self-governance and self-service. So that's really important. We want to write a we story together with them. But let me start with that. Which types of users do we distinguish? And to start with, the first type of users are our consumers. Those are anyone in or outside Lineas is potentially a consumer. What can he or she do? He can view the workbooks, he can filter in all the production projects on our Tableau server, but he can't edit the workbooks or edit any visualization. You can say that's a viewer in the new license system in Tableau server. At this moment, not everybody in Lineas is a consumer, but we're trying to get there. So consumer is our first user type. And then we have the consumer plus, and that's really an important user type because this is where the self-service business intelligence happens. These are BI profile users, people who create the dashboard themselves, but they use the data sources that are published on Tableau server, so they don't create their own data sources, they use the published data sources. It's important to say that not everybody can be a consumer plus as they want. They have to be, followed a training, a basic Tableau training. So that's also important requirement of being a consumer plus. So they can make adjustments and they create their own workbooks, their own visualizations. And they have to follow, it's very important, they have to follow the Tableau guidelines, the Lineas Tableau guidelines that we have created ourselves and created together with them. The third group are the power users. I forgot something to say. The Consumer Plus, at Lineas, they use the web edit of the Tableau server, so they don't use Tableau desktop. That is the biggest difference between the Consumer Plus users and the power users. The power users at Lineas, they can create their own visualizations using the published data sources, but they can use Tableau desktop to do that. And they can even create new data sources themselves and publish them in a sandbox project. So in that project, they can play around and they can experiment with their own created data sources. But those users, they have a deep knowledge of Tableau, a deep understanding of how Tableau works. They are trained, they are using Tableau for several months, and then they can get the power user license, let's say. It's also important to say that they not only have a deep understanding of Tableau, but they also have a deep understanding and proven use of our own Lineas guidelines, of our own governance process, of our own review process. It's very important to emphasize. And then last but not least, the data modelers. This is the BI team, the central data team. They can do anything in Tableau server. They can save, they can edit, they can move, they can delete, they can, all the workbooks and data sources. So this is a central data team, and they publish the data source on Tableau server, which can be used by our power users and our Consumer Plus users. So these are our user types. We have set specific user groups and specific sets of permissions so that they can work in. And now I'm going to tell you something about how we are using our Tableau server as a BI platform. Let's start with saying that we only have one production site at Lineas. We used to have different sites, but we migrated. And the migration made that they made our lives a bit more easier in terms of publishing data sources, in terms of publishing workbooks, and also in terms of user management. But it doesn't mean that we don't have a content promotion. We really have a sandbox environment, we have a production environment. So, and I will now tell how our content promotion, how does it work. So to start with, we have, on our Tableau server, we have different projects and different sub-projects with different sets of permissions. And the first project is the sandbox project. This is the environment where the Consumer Plus users create their new workbooks based on published data sources, and they can play around. Everyone can only see their own work. So there are a lot of workbooks in there, but they only can see their own work. If they want to share their workbook with other colleagues, or if they think their workbook is ready for production, then they can save it themselves into an acceptance environment. And this is just another project on the same site, but with different permissions assigned to it. Now, at this moment, when the Consumer Plus has saved it to the acceptance project, it now becomes visible to all other Consumer Plus users. And this is where our review process takes place. To initiate that review process, the Consumer Plus assigns two peers. One to do the technical review, and one to do a review of the content of the workbook. The technical review has to be done by another Consumer Plus who has Tableau knowledge, who knows how Tableau works, who knows how calculated fields are made and stuff like that. So they have to review the technical aspects of the workbook. Another person, he can review the content. This could be anyone who knows the data, who knows the process behind it, who has knowledge about the source system, the source application. And when the review is done and there are no issues, then a data modeler, remember somebody from the data team, can publish that workbook into production. And from now on, this workbook is visible for everyone. So we have set our review process in order to guarantee quality workbooks. That's the reason why we are doing this. We have structured our production project into different departments just for the ease of use, and we don't allow raw data exports because we really want to use Tableau for their analytical purposes and not for the let's say operational purposes. And then, last but not least, we have another project, because we make a strong distinction between our workbooks on the one hand and our data sources on the other hand. We have a project called Data Sources, where we publish all our data sources that are created by the data modelers and created by our power users. And all data sources can be used by anyone, but they're only visible, physically visible, by our Consumer Plus users. It's also important to say that every data source that we publish on Tableau server has to be documented. Therefore, we created a SharePoint page, and the Consumer Plus can find documentation about the data model, of the data source, about the granularity of that data source, so what does one row represent. They can find also a brief description about the data source, so that's very important to know that every Consumer Plus can use the documentation and can start with the documentation before they start creating their own visualizations. We have also made some naming conventions, about workbooks, about data sources, and we also use tagging to make it easier for the Consumer Plus to search for a certain type of data source.
Right, thanks, Stan. So now I've shown you our technical setup. Stan's walked you through our review process and the way we work with certifying or promoting content. Now, of course, you need to get people involved. And there's various ways to do this. Of course, there's all the classic ways. You can start mailing people. You can set up meetings. We use the SharePoint site for documentation purposes. But it's also a way to shout out. You can share things and stuff. And we also have Yammer, which is like a sort of corporate Facebook. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. So these for us are the classic ways. Basically, you start yelling that you have something cool, and you're trying to draw people in. But that's not enough. So we did some more things. We stole things, what we saw from on Tableau conferences, for example. So of course we're doing demos whenever we produce something new. That's only logical. Of course the doctor session, I'm sure you've seen them running around here. That's something we stole because we like it a lot. And also it really diminishes the boundary between ourselves, the data team, and our users. Because we want them to know that we are there for them. That's basically it. They shouldn't be taking this journey up on their own. We are there to guide them, to help them. And once they're ready to go, they're fully self-service. All the better. And of course, we've also started providing our own, giving our own training sessions. We used to have consultants do that for us. Now, for just the basic training, we're starting to do that ourselves. Again, it makes the users more familiar with us. It gets them involved, because that's the whole point. Then the next thing we're trying to do is, so there's a few things in our process that require user input as well, and some, especially from, I would say, the higher ups in the business. So the way we're trying to involve these people is we've just recently started appointing so-called POs, which are people more or less per department who will be responsible for what needs to be done in terms of data questions, in terms of building data stories, in terms of making data available. So we've tried giving these people some responsibility. We're still fiddling with what the best model is or the best frequency to ask input to them, but to not overload them too much. We've, of course, involved these people when we are determining the roadmap for the data warehouse, which is a big investment, so we need to make sure that our priorities are well aligned with the people we're serving here. And then, yeah, we also have a Tableau task force, which is just another group of people who communicate often about the governance process, because we don't want to impose something on our users that they don't like. I mean, we're trying to get them involved once again. And then finally, we're also doing some things to not only make these people feel involved, but to make these people participate and work together and be a real data community, which is a big step, because on the surface, we're actually just giving these people a new application. That's what this looks like for them. It's a new tool. It's Tableau, okay. But it's so much more than that, because when you start democratizing data, you want people to feel responsible for it. You want people to take ownership, because when they're trying to build a report and they're seeing this isn't right, they shouldn't be coming to us yelling this isn't right. Oftentimes, they should be asking the question themselves, what aren't we doing right? Why is this data so horrible? And oftentimes that means we need to improve the processes. So people need to start getting proactive. And they need to know that they're not on their own, not just among the data team, but among the whole of Lineas. So we want people, when they make cool things, we want to offer them a platform to share cool things. And that's why we have our own Tableau Day. So once a quarter, we all get together. Basically, everybody who has access to Tableau and has got the Consumer Plus rights is invited. Even the other ones can come if they want. And we spend a full day. We have workshops. We have someone explain new features. We have demos by the users themselves, the people who created it. We also do challenges. We have our own little Iron Viz competition. So here's a few examples. So as you see, this is a little poster I made for the one on January, just trying to make people feel as if it's something special and they are part of something special. So for example, this is one of our data modelers, no, one of our power users, sorry. And he's made like this fantastic thing about the network, because a lot of the data we're dealing with is, of course, geographical data. And obviously, presenting the data in the form of just numbers is not really pleasant nor practical to work with. These are the winners of our latest Tableau challenge. And we even had a colleague of ours who just happened to be messing around with 3D printing, create a custom medal for them. So that's fun. And this is the thing we like. One of the most rewarding things to see when you're introducing Tableau and you're getting everybody involved is all of a sudden these meetings, which used to be just some dude running through slides, all of a sudden people start asking questions immediately. You open it up, they see something, and you can jump in, drill down, pivot it. So meetings become way more interactive. And on these Tableau days, you see that as well. Whenever somebody's presenting someone, there's immediate interaction from the public, which we really like. So I guess we're done, right? We're the perfect company. We've set everything up. No, of course not. We're never done. It's a work in progress. So what are the areas we still need to improve upon? First of all, I mean, getting the data is one thing. Getting the data right, or in our little analogy, getting the picture right is hard. So you need to continue adding more data sources to give more texture to it, to provide more context to the data you're working with. That's one. Of course, the data you are getting needs to be structured in a way that's aligned with the processes the users are used to. So that's what we need to get the image quality up. We have some areas where that's great. We have others where there's still a lot of work to be done. Then once you get the image right, you need to make sure that the movie they are shooting is actually a good movie. The stories being told need to be interesting stories. So that means, that means guiding our users into telling the best possible stories. That means explaining them why pie charts suck. I know we've been bashing on Excel and pie charts all day. I don't know about you guys. But they don't know. They're used to doing that in Excel. So you need to help them. And there's, of course, a whole governance process to guide them through that. Getting better insights also not only means telling better stories, it also means growing our own capabilities. There's so much stuff going on in the world of data right now regarding predictive modeling, for example, which is really interesting when you're trying to, predict when your wagon is going to be damaged, or your locomotive. Really going down to do correlation analysis to make sure we find root causes, and because it's okay to just present numbers and bar charts, you need to know why. And we need to train our users to be able to answer these questions themselves. Why? And then there's the final part. We're a relatively small group of people. Lineas is a company with over 2,000 employees. Ideally, we want everybody in. Of course, that's not going to happen. We know that a guy who's doing the shunting operations is probably not that interested in bar charts or in whatever kind of reporting it is, but his boss is. So we need to get everybody, not just in our tower in Brussels, but everybody in the stations, our partners abroad. We need to get them involved, grow the community, and make sure that this disappears. All these endless piles of Excels, undocumented, people spending their days wasting away. No, we need to get rid of that. And we have for a large part. Because now people are looking at this, which can be the same data, just structured better, way more informative, way easier to draw conclusions from it. What are the other successes we found? Well, people used to be working in isolation. We're trying to get them out of their shell. All of a sudden, everything they're doing is public. They can see it in Tableau. They can share it with their colleagues. And if their colleagues see something that may be off, they can intervene. So the fact that everything's now tidy, structured in a way that people can work with it, they can see who to address, who's responsible, that's, of course, a big win for us. And then this working together. And these Tableau days and the community events we're doing, because we're also taking these people out of the building, taking them with us when we're going to fun Tableau events. For some of you, this is your first Tableau conference. It is for me as well. It's fantastic. But Tableau and their partners, they organize a host of awesome events to go to. And we like to invite our users with us as well, because if data is not just the data team's responsibility, then having fun with it might as well be a shared experience. And then here you see some statistics. The number of users from when we started with our Tableau journey, the number of dashboards being created, the numbers of views. The main takeaway here is we're growing fast, and we're still not going as fast as we want. Because we're all super motivated to do even better, to draw even more people in, to get the picture right, and to tell better stories. And to give you an example of one of these stories, Stan will show you.
Okay, I will show you quickly, because we're almost over our time, a little example of what we call a good example of a Tableau story. I think you guys will understand that for us at Lineas, it's really important to know exactly where our wagon's at each point in time, right? So wagons that are standing still cost money. They cost a lot of money, so therefore we created a dashboard that shows the availability of our wagons in Belgium and even Europe.
That's the one.
So here you can see what we can call a top-level dashboard of our wagon reload dashboard. You can see the available freight cars in Belgium. You can see how many wagons that are available outside or inside a station. You can see the freight cars divided in their standstill time, less than a day, more than 3 days, etc. So this is typically a dashboard where managers are interested in. When you want to dive into a certain thema, you can click on this button, and then you will be directed to a thema, the available freight cars in Belgium. You can see the evolution of the available freight cars in Belgium over time. We also put a map on it, so here you can see the most important stations in Belgium, like Ghent, Antwerp, Genk. And you can see as well the number of available freight cars divided by wagon category. And when you click on a certain station, you will be directed to another page, another visualization that shows you exactly where the wagons are at that moment in time. So when you hover over a dot, you can see the wagon number or even the order ID and stuff like that. So we think this is a good example of how we are trying to create stories at Lineas. We're not showing static data, but we're showing moving data in a visual, appealing, and usable way that converts data into insights. And we think that that's the power of Tableau, creating data stories in a governed way on a BI platform like Tableau. So we'd like to thank you for your attention. We hope that you enjoyed our session and heard some interesting things to take away with you to your own company. I think that we try to emphasize that for us, self-service is a very strong concept because you have more hands to do the work, but it's definitely something that not comes by itself. You have to put effort in it every day. And a good governance and a good structure is very important, and above all, try to make it fun. Thanks for listening.